You doing work?
Mr. Chair, it is now 9 o'clock. We have quorum.
Welcome to the August 5th, 2021 meeting of the Riverfront Design Committee. My name is John Postick, and I am the chair of the committee. The following guidelines are in place for meetings in the City Council chamber at City Hall. Only the south entrance to City Hall will be open for access to the building. For exiting the building, all accesses can be used. Air purifying machines have been installed in the chamber. Hand sanitizer machines and disposable face masks will be available. When called on, applicants and speakers will come to the front podium to speak. Only one person at a time should come to the podium. Speak into the microphone, please, and identify yourself and provide your address for the record when you begin speaking. Address your comments to the committee. Limit your comments to 3 minutes. Citizens may address the committee on agenda items by responding to the chair's call for speakers during discussion on each item and signing the speaker's log on the podium. All comments must be relevant to the item. The chair or presiding officer may, in his or her discretion, prohibit a person from addressing the committee and/or remove that person from the council chambers if that person commits any disorderly or disruptive behavior. Please see the agenda for more information about these requirements. If you parked in the Sheridan Walker parking garage north of John Rex Elementary School, staff can provide a parking validation ticket to you. The agenda and documents are located at https://okc.primegov.com/public/portal. You would then select the Riverfront Design Committee meeting, then click on an agenda item, and the relevant documents will come up below the item. Princess, will you please call the roll?
Committee Member Postic,
Present.
Committee Member Heisel,
Present.
Committee Member Dean,
Present.
Committee Member Doherty,
Present.
Committee Member Howard, Committee Member Larson, Committee Member Montoya,
Present.
Committee Member Templeton, Committee Member Torres.
Present.
That completes roll. Mr. Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you, Princess. Item number 2, approval of minutes from the July 1st, 2021 regular meeting. I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
So that was a motion by
Heisel.
Heisel, second by Doherty?
Correct. Our screen says waiting.
We will have to do a voice vote. Committee Member Postic,
Yes.
Committee Member Heisel,
Yes.
Committee Member Dean,
Yes.
Committee Member Doherty,
Yes.
Committee Member Howard, Committee Member Montoya,
Yes.
Committee Member Templeton, Committee Member Torres,
Yes.
That completes the vote. The motion passes.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3, cases withdrawn. There are none. Item number 4, continuance requests. There are none. Item number 5, consent docket. There is none. Item number 6, cases for individual consideration. There are none. Prior to agenda item number 7, we have a statement from a committee member.
Committee Member Dana Templeton would like to state that the firm that I work for has active business with the Chickasaw Nation.
Okay,
Thank you. You can continue on with the item.
thank you. Item number 7, other business. Item 7A, BOA-14890 at 659 First Americans Boulevard. Laura?
Thank you. This is before you to make a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment on a variance request concerning the height and size of a sign. There are several other items in Chapter 59 that this needs a variance from that are not part of Scenic River. So I have concentrated my staff report on just the height and the size per Scenic River regulations. I would like to note that a certificate of approval will be required for this sign prior to the issuance of a sign permit. If the final design of the sign is 100 square feet or larger, and I am confident that it will be, the CA will have to come back to the Riverfront Design Committee for review and approval, and I have discussed this with the representatives of the First Americans Museum. In your staff report, there was a lot of history of this site. I think everybody is excited that the opening is coming up, actually we can say next month. The facility will be open now. There are some items that I included in my staff report concerning the height and the size of signage. In Scenic River, we have a maximum height of 10 feet and a maximum size of 50 square feet. So the request before you today, they're wanting a 35-foot tall sign, and it is a 3-face sign, and because of the design, we have to count each of the faces. And so that actually makes for a lot of square footage for this proposed sign. The current sign that they have, and there was a picture of that, thank you so much, Cameron. I believe that sign started out as a construction sign at one point, and it is approximately 24-foot wide and 15-foot tall. So it's 360 square feet. So the proposal is for a 35-foot tall sign. This one is 15, so 20 foot taller than this. And their concern is visibility for the traveling public. So if you are on I-35 and you're headed north, most of you have done this, and you look off to the east, you can see the mound, which actually is the FAM mound, and the Hall of People, which is, I look on it as a disc. I believe it's supposed to be part of a spear. And those both are approximately 90 feet tall. So they're clearly, you get your attention, you can see it, especially if you're eastbound on 40 as well. I think the main concern is if you're westbound on 40 and you don't really see those as well. Staff's opinion is that the mound and the building essentially are bigger signs than you would ever be able to get as far as attracting attention. And I had included that one picture from Google Earth. When you exit, while you can't read the sign, you can see the current sign down there at the entrance, in addition to being able to see the mound and the building. Staff felt if the new sign was the same height as the current sign, it should continue to be visible from the I-40 exit ramp. If the proposed sign were reduced to 15-foot tall and continue to have sides that are 5 foot, which is what the current proposal is, each side would be reduced down to 75 square feet for a total of 225 square feet. And that is what staff is recommending in our staff report to you, to recommend to the Board of Adjustment maximum height of 15 feet, maximum size of 225 square feet. This item is on this afternoon's Board of Adjustment agenda for consideration by the Board of Adjustment. We do have representatives for this application in the audience, and they also have a presentation that they want to show you. And do you all have any questions for me before they get started?
No.
I'm the Deputy Municipal Counselor for the City of Oklahoma City, and I have been involved with this project for at least the last 12 years. I do economic development work for the city. I wanted to give you a little background about how we got where we are. Back in the 1980s, the state legislature did a study, and that study recommended that the state consider building a museum to demonstrate Oklahoma's strong connection to and heritage with the Indian culture. So in 1994, they created the Native American Cultural and Education Authority, which is a state agency. And the purpose of that agency was to construct and build a museum and to maintain it as defined in the state statutes. Well, they created the agency, and over the next 20 years or so, the state would on occasion fund the agency and its mission. They wanted it to build the museum out of revenues that it generated. Well, it kind of became a chicken and the egg concept. You can't generate revenues until you build the museum. So the state would occasionally contribute money into the project. And then in 2015, the state legislature kind of threw up its hands on the project, and it passed legislation that in essence said that if the city of Oklahoma City wanted to take over the project, it could do so. So there was an effort made by the Chickasaw Nation to partner with the city to take over the project. And that is how we became involved. The state at that time authorized another $65 million in bonds to finish out the construction, contingent upon the city contributing $9 million and a contribution from the Chickasaw Nation. The property out there, and why you have before you today the PUD, the state, when it started its project, had the position that it did not have to comply with city zoning regulations. So it started the project and built it on property that was zoned R1 that has never been changed. So part of the petition today we're asking you and we're supporting is to support revising the zoning per the PUD to make it an industrial site. And the signage issue arose when the state has been in and controls the museum. It will become the city's museum officially 25 years from now when the bonds are paid off. Until then, the city has a possessory interest and a statutory authority to operate the museum, but it doesn't officially own the property that is in the state's hands. So it's kind of a convoluted process, and as you could imagine, we assumed the state would be taking care of building the sign, and it did not become part of the project, and at the last minute, it realized we really need a sign out there that's attractive and can be seen, and so the people, the public, can find where they're going. And on behalf of the city, we're supporting the application made by the Native American Cultural Agency. As part of the 2015 statutory provisions, the city entered into an operating agreement with the American Indian Cultural Center Foundation, which is a 501c3 entity, to operate the museum for us. And they've hired a world-class operator, and the recommendation of that operator is for us to have the sign that we're going to present to you today and that the property be rezoned. And on behalf of the agency and the foundation, we have with us today Michael O'Neill, who's here to represent and tell you and support why we believe the current signage that is there is a hardship if that sign remains, and it's a hardship to the public in being able to find the entrance into the museum, which sets off pretty far back from the road. So we, on behalf of staff, recommend and support the application. And appreciate very much planning staff's role in enforcing the statute regulations that the city has passed, but ask that you support the variance that we're requesting.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am Michael O'Neill, and my address is 522 Concord Drive, Oklahoma City. As Wiley said, I represent the American Indian Cultural Center Foundation, which is the operator for the museum. And as we approach opening day, we're concerned with the ability of the general public to quickly find the site. We're talking about a location on Eastern Avenue with quite a bit of semi-truck traffic at certain times of the day and relatively high speed limits, and we want people to be prepared to enter the site as they approach the museum. Could you increment the slides? So you can see here, the area in red is the area that's going to be subject to the PUD if it's approved, that's proposed today as well. That's the area that is still owned by the state of Oklahoma. And the surrounding property is owned by the Chickasaw Nation subsidiary, that plans to do a large commercial development, but none of that is done yet. And so you can see that this museum sits quite a ways off of Eastern Avenue, and that's not even a public road that's coming into the site. There's an easement to get to the museum, but it's not even dedicated as a public road. So we've got a public road, more than 1,000 feet away from the museum, which is the closest public point. And here's another view of the location of the sign relative to the museum. As you can see, that's quite some distance, and that's the existing sign. If you look at this picture, the existing sign is, staff is correct that it's a 15-foot tall display surface, but the upper edge is at roughly 21 feet from grade. So that's an approximation of where we think this sign would be in the field of view if it's approved.
May I interject with a question on that last image? Is this image, to the best of your ability, represented accurately to scale?
Yeah, the
new
relative
sign?
scales of those two, yes.
Okay, thank you.
This is a view from the exit, and if you look close to the windshield header or support on the right, you can just barely see where the existing sign is from that exit ramp. And you certainly can't see any of the language on it, but it's not prominent, and that's at 21 feet from grade top edge. This is the approach coming from the west on eastbound I-40. And this is at double speed. Nobody was driving this fast. As you can see, you can tell that something's there, but it's not a very good indicator of what's coming up. And after the bridge, that entrance comes up pretty quickly. This is coming from the south-north on Eastern, and you can see you don't have very long to see where your entrance is after you pass that railroad bridge coming into the site. This is going southbound on I-35. This is the way you would enter the site from that direction. And as you can see, if someone's looking off to the side, they can just barely see part of the Hall of the People as they're coming off this exit, but it's not exactly prominent, and it's not readily apparent how you get to it. And as you emerge from underneath I-40, you've got the same issues that you have when you're entering from, eastbound I-40, that you don't see much of an indicator of the site until you're pretty close to it. And in none of these, as you're approaching on Eastern, is the museum really in the driver's field of view. It's off to the right, but it's not readily apparent that that's where you would enter the museum property. And this is coming from the east, and this is the most convoluted approach.
While we're looking at these, can I ask a question?
Please.
Have you worked with the city and/or ODOT regarding wayfinding along these corridors?
We
These
do
exits?
have, ODOT is planning to install 3 signs.
Okay.
They're going to install one at the exit location from southbound I-35.
Okay.
So it would be, I mean, it's quite a ways back from where you enter the museum. And then there's one from the westbound direction and one from the eastbound direction
On I-40.
on I-40.
Okay.
Do you happen to know what the speed limit is on Eastern Avenue outside that entrance?
It's 40 miles an hour.
That's unfortunate.
We'll talk later.
Can I ask a question? This is Dana Templeton. Can you tell me what the materials on that sign are going to be?
The material on the sign? My understanding is the face is going to be vinyl. It's mostly a dark material. If you look at, see, can we put up an image of the sign?
It'll be
Okay.
lit.
So if you look at everything from the word museum down, that's certainly all vinyl, and all the background is a vinyl material. And then the lettering above, that's translucent material, it's internally lit. So everything that's white or colored above that museum, the level of that museum word is internally lit, translucent.
How does this meet the ground? Does it sit on a concrete pedestal or?
Yeah,
What-
the base of it is going to be very close to the footing that's there. So that's, the footing itself is a bit below, the grass that you can see in that image.
Okay, going back to my question, so are you saying that the base of that below the M is probably like plywood or something with a vinyl wrap? Or is it?
No, it's a metal material is my understanding.
Okay, and it is electrified. And going back to, I think it was Mr. Postic who asked the question about the height and the scale. So the white one behind it is actually, how tall now? 15 feet?
The sign behind,
The white one, the existing sign is,
the existing sign has a 15-foot tall face. And the bottom of the display surface is roughly 6 feet off the ground.
and so, okay, so you're saying it's going down. So the FAM portion is a little bit, if it's a 35 feet, then that should be another 20 feet? I'm still trying to gather
Oh,
the
yeah,
scale.
the portion of the bottom of the word museum, that's the midpoint on the sign. So if you go from the top down, the bottom of the word museum is about 17 and a half feet. And that line is about 14 feet below the top, that white line.
Okay. And this is a 3-sided sign, right?
This is what, I'm sorry?
A 3-sided sign.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, it's a triangular.
And do you need that backside?
The backside doesn't really do anything. It's mainly just to close off, so you're not looking at the backside of a structure. And, potentially, I guess it could be blank because if you're on the site, you know where you are.
I think the square footage is determined by adding all 3 sides. And so if you only had 2 sides, you'd have, in essence, more square footage allowed, right? Is that right, Laura?
If there was not a face on the west, that wouldn't count towards square footage of signage, so a third of what they're proposing would not, it would reduce the proposed square footage, you're correct. And the only reason that we're having to count all 3 sides is because the angle is more than 30 degrees, and this is an equilateral triangle, so it's 60-degree angles, so all 3 faces count.
The backside doesn't necessarily have to have anything on it from a display perspective, but closing it off would be desirable aesthetically.
Yeah, I'm just saying also, there's other ways to line the inside, but maybe not be able to actually light it as well, maybe with LED. But I was just trying to get you more square footage and more space if you getting it closer. So.
Yeah, I think the FAM I think there is a little bit of utility. It's going to be hard to see from I-40, but if you're going I-40 eastbound, you might be able to see the top 3 letters of the sign from I-40, and that could have value from a wayfinding perspective.
And I think currently, as was noted in the staff report, the existing sign is parallel with Eastern, and therefore you can't see it coming or going. So logically,
Correct.
you would need to.
Yeah, nobody's exactly pleased with the existing sign, but we need something prominent to guide people into the entrance. And, you know, we need a certain amount of height out of this new sign for it to be worth taking down the old one. You know, we need a prominent enough marker to make it worth the expense of the sign.
And
Can we look at the image from the application?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you asked, Gloria.
Oh, I was pushing the wrong button. Okay. Can we see the image from the application? There it is.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay, that's not the image I saw.
The one comment I would make about this one is when you see the woman in the lower right corner, she clearly is not to scale. If this is proposed to be a 35-foot tall sign, because she would be a little small in perspective too.
There's an 8-foot dimension there, so maybe she's 5 feet.
And maybe she is only 5 feet tall.
Very
She's
tall
like
sign.
my height. But then that would mean 7 times her height is the height of the sign, and
That would be accurate.
I don't know the height of that figure.
yeah, normally I think of when you calculate for a man, you do like 6 foot, and for a woman, it's like 5'7" or 5'6" or something, but.
I have 2 thoughts I'd like to share. I agree with Councilmember Templeton's observation that you could potentially eliminate the back side of the sign if you were trying to reduce the square footage. I think for the intents and purposes of what this Riverfront Committee is trying to achieve with a consistent beautification and look and all that of this area, I don't know that would really benefit the design. And my guess is you would agree because you submitted a 3-sided sign. My second thought is that I don't know that I agree with the assessment that the purpose of this sign is to be seen from I-40, because if ODOT is going to install highway exit signs on the highway directing highway traffic to the correct exit, then it's just a matter of signifying to traffic on Eastern Avenue where the entrance driveway is. And if that's the goal, then I think a 15-foot sign is more than sufficient, or even 21 feet if it was matching the top elevation of the existing sign.
Well, I think our concern is that somebody getting off at the exit, especially if they're coming from either the north or from the east, is going to go through a pretty circuitous path to get there. And once they're in range of where they need to turn, seeing a clear marker that that's where it is pretty valuable. And the height, just to be seen well from that distance when you when you emerge from that I-40 bridge, needs to be fairly significant.
I couldn't agree more. And a 90-foot tall sign would be more visible than a 35-foot tall sign, but we need to draw a line at some point. And also, if there is a circuitous path between the entrance to the museum and the exit from the highway, I would venture a guess that the majority of people visiting would be looking at GPS on their phone or would otherwise know where they're going. And so really, we're not trying to signal to people from a long way away. We're trying to signal to people who are within sight of this sign or within sight of the driveway where the actual turn in is. That's how I see this situation.
Well, I think that is true. I mean, most people will be using GPS directions to get into the site, but it's still going to help to have a more significant visual cue. And this is the signature element of this whole portion of the Scenic River Overlay Design District's area, in that this is, the American Indian Cultural Center District. So guiding people in, it helps designate where that district starts. You know, and in the absence of, you know, any sort of a gateway marker there at the moment from the city, this also helps people understand, you know, that they're in a special area of.
Just as an aside, if I can make a suggestion, it may be worth engaging the city on additional signage between the highway exits and the entrance to this site, directing you at an intersection which way to turn and so forth.
That would certainly be helpful.
We have those throughout the city, guiding people to the zoo and the National Memorial downtown. Something like that might be worth engaging the city on. Just, that's not relevant to this, it was just a suggestion.
Right. Well, I think that's on the agenda to resolve. Yeah.
Is there, can I ask a question? Jonathan, can I ask a question about the width to height ratio? Is there something significant about that ratio? Was there a decision that 5 feet is the number and it's got to be 35, or can it be wider and shorter, or you guys like that ratio?
I think the ratio is desired just from an aesthetic perspective. That a slim marker is more attractive, and I think if you get, like, for instance, the FAM lettering up to a height that can be seen, and then you arrange it horizontally instead, it's just, you know, it's a different kind of a sign. It would be substantially wider, and we don't want a sign that goes up and then has a wide top, but it's not wide elsewhere. The consistent dimensions are part of the aesthetic objective.
Sure. No, I think a shorter and a wider sign with the lettering. I mean, just basically you're expanding it out would be maybe even a little bit better, easier to see, in my opinion.
May I ask some more questions? Can we go back to the application where he has a oversight site where it shows I think it was the boundaries of the perimeter of the guidelines?
But you said
His application, I believe, had
the location map?
a location
Go back
map.
to like the very first one.
Maybe the red outlined PUD.
That one right there?
I think it was within the presentation that we provided.
Yeah, the presentation you
sorry.
provided. It was showing where I thought it was
So that's the boundaries of state ownership.
okay. Right, that's it. And I was looking at the sign location, and the white line here is north of this white line on the west side of Eastern. You're saying that little strip of land is going to be part of the Chickasaw Nation, or who owns that strip of land?
That strip that's right against Eastern is actually owned by the city.
Okay. So you said that the speed limit was like 40 miles an hour, but there was a lot of semi-traffic and stuff, and you are. If you're looking up, you'll see FAM, and I'm sure if you're going to the museum, you'll understand what FAM stands for. But I was wondering if you had markers further back, maybe something else further back, because if you've got a semi coming up and you want to take a right and you're just seeing that sign right at the turn, you're going to have to slam on your brakes and turn, or I would, and turn right into the area. And I was wondering maybe another sign further back or something too to kind of give you a heads up. But like Commissioner Pustek was saying, that there's also the GPS stuff, but I was wondering maybe an issue with the second sign. Another one was, we were talking about the aesthetic objective of this sign, and it's been a while since I've been to the site, but it seemed to be a lot of earthy stuff going on, but yet the sign itself, I think the guidelines said it wanted to kind of represent the materials and the style of the actual building that the signage is for. And I was wondering how we came up with that design in reference to how the actual museum looks and is built, and it's...
Well, if I could just kind of interject initially. The sign is not located on the property where the museum is. And your next item is a PUD for the museum, and that does not include the property where the sign is.
Okay.
So one way to look at that is there is no building to match the material to yet.
Okay.
Because what the property that the sign is on, there isn't a structure on it.
Okay. All right.
But with that being said, there probably was some thought to the appearance and the material and the colors of the sign, probably in relationship to the museum. So
Yes, and the sign matches the on-site wayfinding in terms of the
Okay.
color scheme. So it would be hard to see from the video, but if you paused the video, one of the videos, as you're looking at the site wayfinding, it's consistent, although on the on-site wayfinding, the FAM is arranged horizontally instead of vertically. It was just thought that for a prominent sign, it would be much more attractive to arrange it vertically. And it's enough to guide people into the site without being as visually imposing as a wide sign might be. I guess a couple of other features of the sign that might be worth pointing out and could bear on your decision. The bottom 10 feet of the sign is designed to be removable panels that they can come off. Now, there could just be an exposed, so the first 10 feet would go just above that symbol that's at the bottom of the sign. And the panels are removable for a couple of reasons. One, to allow access inside the sign, but two, we've had graffiti problems with the existing sign location, and the replaceable panels at the bottom will allow that to be dealt with easier in the event we have a repeat event. In fact, that's not even the original face of that sign. It was refaced after a significant graffiti event a couple of years ago, that existing sign. So in the event that there's a desire to decrease the height slightly, then the panels at the bottom can just be, shrunk. And that's, in terms of display surface area, this is the desired look aesthetically, but the portion that's actually communicating information is from the word museum upwards, and the other piece is an artistic. I mean, that is a logo for the museum, that bottom element, but it's something that could be foregone if that was necessary to shrink the display surface.
Thank you.
I would just like to say this is Brian Doherty. Brian Doherty and I also serve on the River Trust and been involved in this for 20-some years of the kind of evolution. I just, we've gone from, will this ever even happen, to kind of where it is. It's been a concern, I know, on the River Trust for a long time about that entry and making sure that it's visible, making sure people can get there. I personally, as a landscape architect and a member, I really like this sign. I mean, we've dealt with sign clutter forever, where we have multiple signs, we have all kinds of stuff. I know there has to be wayfaring, I know there has to be directional, but this is a world-class museum that's going to be done. We've been a long time in the making, and I think they've put a lot of time and thought into this, and it is somewhat of an anomaly here in Oklahoma City to have this type of museum. I'd just like to say I really like this. I think it fits with what we've talked about for 20 years. It's that same kind of caliber. So I know that we try to go everything standardized and all, and I think sometimes we have things that are over and above, and I personally think this is, and it deserves this type of signage. So.
Well, thank you. May I make just a couple more points? We have, this is going to be installed on Chickasaw Nation property, and part of the arrangement with the Chickasaw Nation is that this sign will have to be moved eventually, because ultimately the Chickasaw Nation wants the entry road in a different location. And so we'll have to move it, and at that point in time, that any new location would have to be approved, and whatever signage the museum retains will have to be consistent with the signage for the Chickasaw Nation development. So this is, to some extent, this is a stopgap measure until that happens. Now, we can't promise a particular timeline on the Chickasaw Nation development, but my understanding is that they're expecting to be completed, or at least have an initial phase done 2 or 3 years from now. And that would be, the general timeline for moving the sign, or it might be sooner because of relocation of the road.
Are there any additional comments or questions from committee members? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
I'll just say I have a recommended motion. However, if somebody is wanting to make a different motion than what I have, you could either insert height and square footage, or you could actually recommend approval of the application as submitted. And that would be for the 35-foot tall sign with the 5-foot panels on either side. So I was just going to say that. So you're making a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment on this.
I would like to make I'd like to make a motion that we approve the sign as submitted for the height and the face of the signs.
And to clarify, you're making a motion to provide a recommendation of
Correct.
approval to the Board of Adjustment. Is that accurate?
Correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
This is Gloria. I would second that motion.
If everyone can, make sure you go back to the computer screen, not presentation, so that you can see your option to vote. Your live meeting tab at the top there. So, Gloria.
I just might comment, so we don't have a vote from Ricardo? Whoops, it went away, so I don't know what it said, but there was no vote from you on it. And I was getting ready to write down what it is, because not everybody voted for it, and I don't know how many were voting against it, so.
There was 5 in favor,
Okay.
one opposed, 3 abstained.
Okay, gotcha. So did the 5, 1, 3. So that's the 9, but 2 of the 3. So Ricardo would be the only one present. Did you intend to vote, committee member? Did intend to vote. Okay, so Laura, can we add his vote in?
By voice, yeah.
By voice? Okay. So Princess, if you could, Ricardo's going to vote by voice. If you could ask him if he was voting in favor of the motion or against it?
Committee Member Montoya, please vote.
I vote in favor of the motion.
Who's in favor? Okay, thank you.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 7B, PUD 01838 at 659 First Americans Boulevard. Laura?
Thank you. So this is also for that area. It is, hang on just one second. It's for the yellow area, plus there's a lift station that I didn't put on here. It's to the south of this, but it goes with it, and so that's part of the PUD. It obviously does not include all the land. As they indicated, they're going to be coming back at some point later, the Chickasaw Nation is, to rezone that area. So that area around it is zoned R1 and I1, I believe, or I2. It's zoned industrial.
It's R1 around the museum, except I think north of the river. Or no,
South of the museum, it's industrial. Where the lift station is, it's industrial. So there is a
Yeah,
piece
there
of
is a portion
industrial
there.
land that is included in this application. So in the staff report, the only issue that I really discussed, there were 2. One dealt with proposed uses. And as you've seen in previous reports where we've had making a recommendation on a rezoning, I only am looking at those uses that are either not permitted at all in Scenic River, or maybe they're restricted to conditional, and the proposal is to allow it by right. And so I actually outline all of those, and that included community recreation and automotive equipment, cleaning and repairs, light equipment are allowed in Scenic River as conditional, and this application is recommending that they be allowed by right. There's also wholesaling, storage, and distribution restricted, that in Scenic River is only allowed if the underlying zoning is I-2 and I-3. What I have included in this is several of the statements from the American Indian Cultural Center section of the handout, where the intent for this, let me back up a minute, sorry, and I didn't do that on the last one. I started with a statement that we are anticipating in the next year there will be some revisions made in Scenic River. I know you all are waiting with bated breath for the new sign regs, but at some point that will be coming. At the time that we do have revisions coming, we will be addressing the name of this district, since the name of the museum has changed since 2007 when this district was established, so I wanted to say that. The intent for this district was to be supportive of and provide accessory type uses for the museum. And so with that being said, we're looking at rezoning for the museum. The majority of it, I would say 99% of it, is zoned R1, and a museum is not allowed in R1, but this is a museum that will have places to eat. That will probably have potentially liquor could be served. You're going to have a gift store. So, I mean, you're going to have some definitely non-residential uses here. There are no residential uses between the river and the railroad track in this area. In fact, you have to go south of the railroad track to find any, it's south and west to find any residential uses. And north of the river in this area, you don't have residential uses. So this is clearly a non-residential area. Staff did not have issues with the proposed uses. I don't feel they're in conflict with Scenic River. I feel that they're just allowing uses that, due to the uniqueness of the site, are totally appropriate there. It's clearly, as I said, not a residential area. The other issue that I pointed out dealt with, they wanted to allow informational and directional signs to be 10 square feet. We were just talking about the need for wayfinding. So that totally fits in with this discussion. In our current sign regs, we limit directional informational signs to 4 square feet or larger. You can't really get a lot of information in 4 square feet, and so we totally were supportive of allowing larger directional informational sizes on the property itself. As you can see, it's clearly way off the road, and that is why we totally support that request. And so staff is recommending that Riverfront provide a recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission of this rezoning to the PUD. And just to clarify, it is keeping this property in Scenic River, and that is always my top priority when I'm looking at a rezoning application.
Thank you, Laura. Are there any comments or questions from committee members? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Committee member Dana Templeton would like to provide a recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission on the basis that the project complies with the intent of the Scenic Overlay Design District zoning ordinance.
Jonathan Heisel, second.
We will have to do a voice vote. Committee Member Postic,
Yes.
Committee Member Heisel,
Yes.
Committee Member Dean,
Yes.
Committee Member Doherty,
Yes.
Committee Member Montoya,
Yes.
Committee Member Templeton, Committee Member Torres.
Yes.
This concludes the vote. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 8, communications, administrative approval report. There are none. 8B, comments from planning department staff.
You have a meeting next month. We're on a roll.
Hooray.
So please check your calendars. I'll send out a quorum call. The earlier we find out we don't have a quorum, the easier it is for us to get special meeting scheduled so we don't delay projects. So, but thank you all for coming today. I appreciate that. And Katie, was there anything else? No? Okay.
Item 8C, comments from committee members. 8D, next meeting date. As Laura said, we do have a Thursday meeting. And with that, we will adjourn. Thank you.